The sound of the front door closing softly behind me was almost comforting. I took a deep breath of the crisp morning air, letting the coolness calm the small knot of tension growing in my chest. The sun had just begun to rise over the horizon, casting a soft golden light over the landscape. It was a peaceful, serene moment, one that didn't belong to the kind of life I was about to step into for the next few days. From behind me, I heard the rustle of feet on the floor, followed by the soft padding of Sarah, my wife, moving into the doorway. She leaned against the doorframe, a faint smile on her lips, her dark hair falling in loose waves over her shoulders. Her arms crossed, hugging herself slightly, as if she already felt the impending distance between us. "Heading out early today, huh?" Sarah's voice was soft but filled with curiosity. She knew my sales trips were always unpredictable, but this early, that was different. "Yeah, they need me to meet with some big clients in Denver before flying out to Houston," I replied, turning back to look at her, forcing a smile that I hoped seemed natural. "You know how oil and gas deals go. Everyone wants everything yesterday." She smiled, but there was a flicker of concern in her eyes, the kind of look that said she wanted to believe me, but couldn't shake a nagging suspicion. I had grown accustomed to deflecting that look. "You'll be careful?" she asked, her tone light, but with a hint of something deeper, a plea that she wasn't even aware she was making. "Always am," I responded, crossing the small distance between us and planting a soft kiss on her forehead. "I'll be back before you know it." "I know," she whispered, but something in her tone suggested she wasn't entirely convinced. I gave her another reassuring smile, and with one last lingering look, I grabbed my laptop backpack and roller case and made my way to the end of our driveway. As I walked, I felt the familiar pang of guilt settle in. It always came just before I left for a mission, an ache in my chest that reminded me of the life I had promised Sarah, the stability I had vowed to provide when I left the military. But despite my efforts to leave that world behind, it continued to pull me back in, whispering to me with the promise of purpose, of danger, of something greater than myself. She had no idea that behind the polished facade of corporate life, I was still an operative, working for a private sector organization deeply tied to the world of defense and covert operations. The SUV rolled up quietly to the curb, its tinted windows giving no hint of the activity inside. My heart quickened slightly as a man in a black suit met me at the rear of the SUV as the hatch opened. The man aided in placing my luggage in the rear, and as the SUV hatch closed, he helped me with my door. "Can I get you anything, Mr. White?" Not a word was spoken. The door was closed. Taking his place in the driver's seat, he looked back. "Mr. White," the man said, his voice calm and professional, "we're ready." As the SUV pulled away from my home, I cast one last glance at Sarah, who waved to me from the doorway. I waved back, watching as she grew smaller and smaller in the rearview mirror until she disappeared completely. As the SUV navigated through the streets of Denver, my mind shifted to the mission at hand. I wasn't going to the airport as Sarah believed. There was no flight to Houston waiting for me at DIA. Instead, we were heading to a private airstrip on the outskirts of the city, where a plane would take me to a far less glamorous destination. I couldn't deny the thrill that came with these covert missions. The adrenaline, the strategy, the razor-sharp focus, all of it called to something deep inside me. I knew it was wrong to feel this way, especially with Sarah back home, expecting me to be a dedicated husband, focused on building a future with her and our unborn child. Guilt gnawed at me, but there was an undeniable pull I couldn't shake. He hated that a part of him still craved the rush, the calculated violence, the high stakes. It was as if the normalcy of family life could never fully satisfy the beast within. As we approached the jet, my phone buzzed with a message from SSG, coordinates, encrypted intel, and the final approval for my departure. The reality of the mission settled heavily on me again. This wasn't a game. It never had been. A man's life, many men's lives, depending on how things went, hung in the balance. I could justify it by telling myself that men like Ivan Mirov, my target, deserved this fate. Mirov was an arms dealer, someone who profited from chaos and death. Taking him out wasn't just necessary, it was righteous, at least according to the SSG's intelligence. But the guilt of lying to Sarah always came back, an inescapable weight pressing down on me. She had no idea what I truly did. She believed I had left all this behind. that my time as a soldier and operative was over. I wanted to give her the stability she deserved, the peaceful life she craved, but I knew deep down that I was addicted to the covert world, addicted to the life I pretended to have left behind. As they approached the jet, Leroy felt the familiar conflict bubble up inside him. He wasn't a man made for quiet suburbia, but for Sarah, he tried to be. He tried to be everything she needed while suppressing the darker side of himself, the side that came alive in the field when the stakes were life and death, the side that was about to be unleashed once more in Belgrade. As I stepped out of the SUV, I took a deep breath, letting the guilt settle into the background of my mind. It always did, for the mission was all that mattered now.